Hello, my dear friends. A very warm welcome to another session of Power Hour of Zoology. Bio mentor and your guide, Dr. Ami Bayani. I hope till now, whatever Power Hour sessions, be it of physics, chemistry, botany, and zoology, you have understood it well, and I hope that all of them have been helpful to you all. The same way, we are starting with another chapter, which is going to be a very high-weighted chapter for your NEET exam, and that chapter is evolution. Now, evolution, NEET point of view, we have approximately 3 to 4 questions that are asked. There are particular subtopics from where there are large number of questions asked. However, there are multiple subtopics in the chapter, and they can pick up a question from any of the subtopics. We will be taking up few of those topics which are important, which are a little tricky, and will make it absolutely simple for you all, and it'll be like a cakewalk. So be rest assured, and let's continue with the session. Now, what do we mean by the word evolution? When we are talking about evolution, evolution is basically the appearance of new life forms which are better than the ones that are already existing. So say, for example, if we are talking about human beings, okay, or if you're talking about any such gadget, say, for example, if you're talking about computers, now we know that we can do the computer work such as emailing, such as any other thing on our mobile phones, which are small phones. Similarly, earlier times we had computer which was as huge as a classroom, isn't it? So it was a computer which was invented. Now we have computers in the form of tabs also, that is tablets also. So you see that there has been a gradual process. It's not an overnight process. It's a gradual process of forming new things which are better than the ones that were existing in the past. Similarly, evolution is nothing but appearance of new life forms, be it plants, be it animals, be it human beings, from the ones that are existing or were existing in the past, but obviously in a much better way than the ones that were existing, right? So, NCERT has a term and has a sentence which says that evolution is an orderly change. What is it? It is an orderly change from one life form to another, and this is a gradual process. What is this? Give me a second, I'll have a sip of water, please. This is a gradual process. As I told you, it does not happen overnight, right? Now, there's a term which can come in our exams, which is important, which is called as evolutionary biology. So, what is this evolutionary biology? It is the study of history of life forms on Earth. So, how different life forms existed on Earth. This is the very first statement of our NCERT textbooks of the chapter evolution. Now, most of us try to just omit that first paragraph, but always remember a small tip for you all to score 4 marks above the other average students is that you read the first paragraph, you read the last paragraph, because though it is an introduction part, there are some important key points which are present there, which will help you gain marks, because those statements can come as your true and false. Is that clear? Yeah, so what is evolutionary biology? Study of what? Biology, we know, biology, study of life forms. Evolutionary is the history of life forms, study of life forms on this earth. So, study of history of life forms on Earth. Now, if we want to understand how human beings or how any other organism, be it plants or animals, existed on this Earth, how did they evolve on this Earth? For that, we'll have to have an understanding of how Earth came into existence. Earth is a part of the universe, so how universe came into existence. Now, you must have heard of a very important theory which has been since years, which is called as the Big Bang theory. Now, this Big Bang theory explains us that there was a huge mass of hot boiling gases or mass of gases and cosmic dust which had a huge explosion, an unimaginable explosion in physical terms called as the Big Bang theory. When did this occur? This happened approximately 20 billion years ago. Now, billion years ago, we can also write it as BYA. So remember, when there is a term called BYA, even in the question paper, if you have this term BYA, means billion years ago. When it is MYA, means it is million years ago, okay? So 20 billion years ago happened the Big Bang Theory, which was a single huge explosion and came into existence different planets, different stars, and thereby our solar system. So the universe came into existence. In the universe, a very minute speck, now this is mentioned in the NCERT, Earth is considered as a minute speck, and this came into existence approximately 4.5 billion years ago. Now this can also come as an MCQ or match the column, that universe came into existence 20 billion years ago, Earth came into existence approximately 4.5 billion years ago. They are not going to ask us the details of Big Bang Theory. Am I clear on that? Okay. Now, when did life come into existence? As compared to the Earth, life came into existence approximately 500 million years after the origin of Earth. So Earth was 4.5 billion years ago. 500 million years after is approximately 4 billion years ago. This was the time when our life came into existence, okay? Now, how did life come into existence? We've understood the timing approximately of when life came into existence. But then what are the theories which explain that how life came into existence? So different people gave different theories. Now remember, most of it is theories, okay, because none of us existed at that point of time to visualize the entire phenomenon happening. One of the theory was special creation theory. There was theory of panspermia. There was theory of abiogenesis, theory of chemical evolution. Every part can come as our MCQ, okay? Now, when we are talking about theory of special creation, what is this theory of special creation? Special creation means something related to a special creator. And who is the sole ultimate creator of all of us is none other than a great Lord. So there were religious people who gave us this theory, and they said that there are 3 postulates which are there. Now the 3 postulates states that according to the religious theory, Earth is not billions and billions of years old. They said Earth is only 4,000 years old. How old? It is just 4,000 years old. All the living organisms, that is the species and the types that we see today, like the different species of human beings, different species of animals, different species of plants that we see today, they said that all of them were created as such. Means human beings were never Dryopithecus or Ramapithecus, which we'll see in the later part of the topic. However, they said that human beings were as Homo sapiens sapiens, that is, as we are right now. When the Earth came into existence, human beings were Homo sapiens sapiens. Now we are Homo sapiens sapiens, and future also we will remain Homo sapiens sapiens. That is the third conjecture, which said that the diversity was always the same since the creation, is the same, and will always remain the same. However, all these 3 postulates were strongly opposed by Darwin sir, which we'll see in some time. Then there was another theory, which was theory of panspermia. Now, panspermia indicated, or these theories, the Greek philosopher said that life came into existence on this earth from some another planet in the form of spores. So spores came from other planet in the form of meteorites. It struck, and that gave rise to new life. However, this is one of still the most researched theory, but we've not come to an entire conclusion on it, so we cannot completely oppose it. This theory, Darwin sir later on opposed, and we will be talking about it. So this was not accepted. Panspermia was not accepted. Then there was theory of spontaneous generation, or abiogenesis, which said that life came into existence from dead and decaying matter. Like, as you can see, this is a piece of meat where you have maggots. So this theory said that maggots came from meat which was dead and which was rotting up, okay. So similarly, frogs, earthworms, etc. also came up from mud, which was, there was a decaying and rotting matter in the mud, which led to formation of all of this. However, later on, Louis Pasteur sir, when he came across this theory of abiogenesis, came up with an experiment. He took yeast, killed yeast infusion in a small flask, and this killed yeast which was there, he kept on boiling it in a pre-sterilized flask and he closed the flask. Now when he closed the flask, he found out that for few days or many days, there was no growth of any microorganism here. Later on, after a few days, he cut open the neck of the flask and he let it open to the atmosphere, and he saw that there were a lot of microorganisms or microbial growth in the yeast, indicating that if yeast did not grow in the pre-sterilized flask in the killed yeast infusion, which was closed, and when it was open to atmosphere, life came into existence in this, did not indicate that life comes from killed yeast. It indicated that atmosphere had lot of microorganisms which entered the yeast infusion, which grew there, and thereby their population increased, and that led to formation of new life, indicating that life does not come from anything that is dead and decaying. So once and for all, abiogenesis theory with respect to coming from dead and decaying matter was completely negated. However, when when Louis Pasteur sir explained this, he said that life comes from pre-existing life. So that helped us understand the continuation of life, but not the origin of first life. So how did first life come into existence? We don't know. So hence by this theory cannot be completely accepted for origin. It can be completely accepted for continuation. Is that clear? Then, which was a theory that we can completely accept. Then came up two scientists called Oparin and Haldane, JBS Haldane sir and AI Oparin sir. Now they explained to us that life came from non-living but from chemicals. It was chemicals which were present in the atmosphere that led to formation of micromolecules followed by macromolecules, and macromolecules which were formed were giant macromolecules in the form of polysaccharides, in the form of proteins, in the form of RNA, which then later on formed the first form of cellular form of life approximately 2 billion years ago. So 3 billion years ago was the acellular form of life, which was these giant macromolecules, followed by 2 billion years ago the cellular form of life, which was probably aquatic, and then slowly gradually life came into existence. Now do we follow this theory or do we accept this theory? Yes, we accept this theory because the first part of the theory, that life comes from from the chemicals, that is from chemicals followed by micromolecules followed by macromolecules, has been proven in the laboratory. How has it been proven in the laboratory? Let us see. So there was this scientist called Harold Urey and Stanley Miller. Now when we talk about our NCERT just talks about Miller sir. Now Miller sir and Harold sir actually created an apparatus which is called as the glass apparatus, or an electric discharge apparatus, which was completely made up of glass. This was pre-sterilized. There were no microorganisms present into it. And to simulate the conditions which were present in the early primitive atmosphere, which had no oxygen, it was a reducing type of atmosphere, they had a vacuum pump also so that there is no oxygen present into it. They had water in this flask which was boiling at approximately 800 degrees Celsius. As it converted to water vapor, the superheated water vapor, which is light, now entered into the other flask which has methane, ammonia and hydrogen. Water coming from water vapor, and there were electrodes which created a spark of approximately 75,000 volts, because there were a lot of electric discharges in the form of lightning, there were thunderstorms, there was direct UV radiations providing energy for all these reactions taking place. So once this happened, there was this electric discharge which was simulating those kind of energy currents that were coming onto this earth. When the energy currents were coming, and as the earth was moving farther and farther away, as we study in the Big Bang theory, that once a huge explosion takes place, a minute particle or a speck formed earth, this earth was moving away from the central hot boiling mass. As it was moving away, it was cooling down. So as the cooling down process took place, here also we had to give a cooling down process. So Miller sir created a condenser here which would cool down the gases present here. As water vapor would cool down, it formed water which was collected into this trap. And this liquid water in the trap, after few days, when it was examined, was found to have certain micromolecules. And the first time Urey and Miller found out was proteins. There were many others who in similar experiments found pigments, they found lipids, they found polysaccharides also. Thereby, the first part of this theory saying that from chemicals there were micromolecules and macromolecules that were formed is absolutely correct. And hence, from them, how the first life came into existence, yes, it is still a mystery, but because the first part of the conjectured theory or this theory is completely acceptable, we say, and has been completely proven, we say that this is one of the most acceptable theories of how life came into existence. Is this clear? Post which, we come to Darwin, sir. Now, I had told you some time ago, like few minutes ago, that the special creation theory said that life came into existence or Earth is just 4,000 years old. At the same time, he also said that all living organisms that we see today were as such, there has been no evolution taking place. And in the species also that we see, all the species that we see were there since the origin of Earth, are and will remain the same. And also that there has been no evolution in a particular species, meaning Homo sapiens sapiens were, Homo sapiens sapiens are, and will remain Homo sapiens sapiens, isn't it? So then Darwin, sir, when he was studying this theory, he said that there is something amiss and let us do a research. He was already very much interested into evolution and was studying the life forms. So he went on a sail voyage on his HMS Beagle ship. So he went on a sea voyage, HMS Beagle ship, and he found out, he went all throughout the world and went and settled on the Galapagos Island. In this Galapagos Island, he was studying multiple different life forms. Now, to his amaze, he studied the life forms of various plants and animals. One of them that excited him the most was Darwin's finches. Now, actually, they were finches named after Darwin later on. Now, these finches, he saw the many generations since he was there for 5 years, and he saw that there has been gradual evolution of life forms, meaning there has been gradual changes in the finches that he would see. Every generation after few generations. So after few generations, they appeared like a different species. He also studied their fossils and found out that there are a lot of similarities in the life forms that are existing now, that existed in the past, and that will also exist in the future, because he saw those three criteria or three categories, okay, the fossils, the present ones, and also that originated from the present ones. He said that though there are similarities, there are certain differences or variations which are found in any population. Now, these variations are present within us. He did not know about inheritance, but he said that they are present within us, and it is these variations which allow some to survive in the changing abiotic factors and some to not survive. Now, those who survived were the ones who were fit, because they could acclimatize or adapt very easily to the abiotic factors. Now, those who adapted survived, those who survived reproduced and left more progeny. Those who couldn't survive eventually perished away. So, he said that only those who were fit how? Reproductively fit, meaning they are capable of reproduction, they will survive and they will pass on their progenies and remain and leave their progenies. Thereby, after a few years, we will have a species which will be much more adapted than the present and than the ones that existed in the past. And thereby, it's a gradual evolution that takes place, indicating that species are not the same since the beginning now and will remain the same. There's a gradual evolution of life forms. He also studied the fossils and found out that Earth is not just 4,000 years old, but it is much, much, much older than that. A similar study was performed by Alfred Russel Wallace when he was studying the same thing or a similar thing in a place called Malay Archipelago. And he came to the similar conclusions. And they both said that it is basically the survival of the fittest that leads somebody to survive, and the ones who are unfit will eventually perish away. And hence they said, especially Darwin sir said, that evolution is basically a gradual process. It's not an overnight process, okay? So it's a gradual process where there are changes that are taking place. They also came to the conclusion that the geological history of the earth closely correlates with the biological history of the earth, okay? And that the earth is not just a few years old, a few thousand years old, but it is approximately billion years old. Now thereby from what he found out, from what he researched, we could easily understand and analyze that what Darwin sir said was correct, and he completely negated the religious theory, the three postulates of the religious theory. But the scientists, I will say that how do we completely believe what Darwin sir said? So there are certain evidences to it, wherein one of the evidences that we talk about is the paleontological evidence. Now, paleontology is study of fossils. Now, you must have heard of dinosaurs that existed in the past. How do we know them? We've actually seen with our own eyes, or on the television, the fossils of dinosaurs. That is the hard remains of the organisms, of the animals or the plants that existed in the past. They are the actual evidences telling us that, okay, these were the animals that existed in the past. Now, as you go deeper inside on the Earth's crust, you find the most primitive organisms. As we come on the higher strata of the Earth, we find the new organisms or the recent organisms that existed in the recent past. And thereby the statement that the geological history closely correlates with the biological history of the Earth. And to understand this, we will see in the future, in the further slides, that there is a particular evolutionary tree of the reptiles, of the animals, and of the plants that has been given. How do we read it? We will study. However, as of now, just understand that the geological history, that is the history of the origin of the earth or the formation of the earth, can be divided, or the entire period or the entire time scale can be divided into various eras, various periods, and various epochs, okay? How do we divide it? We will see in some time. So eras into periods, and periods into epochs. Then we have another understanding is the biogeographical evidences of the adaptive radiation. Taking into consideration, one of the most common examples given in the NCERT is of the marsupials of Australia. Now we know that the entire land mass was a single mass called Pangea. Then there was continental drift. Now when it was Pangea, the marsupials weren't existing in large proportion because there was a lot of competition. When the Pangea had a continental drift, the entire mass was divided into different continents. Now, if we talk about Australia, since the Australian continent did not have much of a competition, the marsupials flourished to a great extent. Again, survival of the fittest, if you remember what Darwin sir said. So, there was an Australian marsupial ancestor which was there. Now, as their population kept on increasing, they migrated to different parts of the Australian continent, settled in different geographical areas, and adapted to that particular geographical area, thereby evolved into different organisms. Thereby, what does adaptive radiation say? As NCERT says, it is evolution of different species. Okay, in a given geographical area, that is Australian continent. So origin of different species in a given geographical area, starting from a point and literally radiating to other areas of geography, thereby leading to evolution, thereby leading to formation of new life forms, which are obviously better than the ones that existed in the past. Then there is morphological and anatomical evidences. Now when we are talking about morphological and anatomical evidences, this is the part from which a lot of questions come, wherein we have homologous organs, and we have analogous organs. Now when we are talking about homologous organs and analogous organs, let us take a fresh slide and understand it. Now when we are talking about homologous organs, say for example we take into consideration example of certain animals. Let us take the same example which is given in the NCERT. We are talking about the forelimbs of mammals, which are man, cheetah, whale, and bat. So we have forelimbs of mammals, which are man, cheetah, whale, bat. Now all of these are mammals we've studied in Animalia. All of their forelimbs which are there, all of their forelimbs have humerus, radius, ulna, carpals, metacarpals, and phalanges. We've studied this even in locomotion chapter, isn't it? So as we have humerus, radius, ulna, carpals, metacarpals, and phalanges, so do all these mammals. But if you see, in man, it is used for purposes such as holding, grasping, writing. Etc. So the functioning is little different. If we are talking about cheetah, in cheetah it is helping in running, galloping. They run very, very fast, isn't it? If we talk about whales, it helps them in swimming. If we talk about bat, it helps them in flying. Now all of these, if we see, they are all performing different functions. Though there is a same structure or a similar structure, but the functioning is different. Why is the functioning different? When they all belong to mammals, they have the same structure because they have different habitats. Bat has aerial mode of life, whale has aquatic mode of life, though man and cheetah have terrestrial mode of life, but their functioning is different. So to adapt to a particular environmental condition, to adapt to the abiotic factors, they have all evolved, they have all developed their functioning into different work. So the same structure performing different functions, we call such organs as homologous organs. So the forelimbs of mammals are homologous organs. What do they explain? They explain to us common ancestry. They explain to us common ancestry and thereby explain to us evolution. Is that absolutely crystal clear? And such kind of evolution that we talk about is divergent evolution. Now from here, large number of questions come almost every year. It's every year that either from homologous organ or from analogous organ, there are questions coming. Is that clear? Moving ahead to the next understanding, which is analogous organs. Now when we are talking about analogous organs, here we saw that the functioning is different, the structure is the same. Analogous organs is absolutely vice versa. Let us again take the same example which is given in the NCERT, wherein they are talking about the wings of butterfly, the wings of bat, and the wings of a bird. So if we are talking about the wings, wings of bat, wings of bird, wings of butterfly. So here you see one is a mammal, another is aves, and another one is arthropoda, that's a non-chordate. When we are talking about wings of butterfly, it is the exoskeleton that is modified to form wings. What is it? It is the exoskeleton modified to form wings. When we are talking about birds, it is the forelimbs that are modified to form wings. And when we are talking about bat, it is the skin which is extended between the digits that forms the wings. Now if you see here, all of these have a common function. What is the function? The function is flying. So there are different structures all performing and converging to the same function, that is flying, explaining us convergent evolution. Why? Because all of them are adapting to a similar habitat, that's aerial mode of life. But aerial mode of life, bird aerial mode of life, and a butterfly again aerial mode of life. Thereby these organs are called analogous organs, and as you can see, since the functioning is converging, this kind of an evolution is called as convergent evolution. It is called as convergent evolution. Is that clear, everyone? Moving ahead to understanding of the next evidences of evolution, that is biogeological or biochemical evidences. Now when we are talking about biochemical evidences, bio is life, chemical, all the various chemicals within the cell, the cellular composition that forms our life. As you know, cell is a basic structural functional unit of life. If we talk about any organism, when any metabolic activity has to take place, it will require enzymes. Isn't it? Be it plants, be it animals, you've studied in the other chapters. We need enzymes. Most of the enzymes are nothing but proteins. Again, biomolecules, the first chapter that we took in the power hour sessions, if you recollect, was on enzymes. So again, these enzymes, how are enzymes or how are proteins formed? Most of us, almost all the plants and animals have DNA as the genetic material, which you've studied in molecular basis, undergo transcription forming RNA. They will undergo translation forming proteins, and proteins acting as enzymes. So this is a common pathway for almost all organisms. But however, to adapt to different conditions, they got modified and they evolved. Then coming up to the understanding of the other evidences by natural selection. So when we talk about evidences by natural selection, now if we can make hybrids, that's what is also given. If we can make hybrids, why? And form different new forms which are better than the earlier ones. For example, if you're talking about mules, has human being not been able to make mules? We have. So if mules are formed, similarly, if human beings can do this over few hundreds of years, why not nature? So nature selects. When we talk about natural selection, it's basically selection of the organisms that are fit to survive, that are adapted, and they will leave more progenies. The beautiful example is of industrial melanism, which was before industrialization and after industrialization, where we have moths. They would, if you're talking about London, this was given in the NCERT, the same example we'll use so that it becomes easier for you to understand. Now in London, before industrialization, there were two colors of moths, which were the dark-winged moth and the light-winged moth. Okay. Now these moths would prevail nicely. However, because there were no industries, there was no pollution. Lichens beautifully grew on the barks of the trees, and the light-winged moth easily camouflage. However, the dark-winged moth wouldn't get camouflage and were easy prey to predators, so their numbers reduced, whereas the light-winged moth's numbers increased. But so these were favored by nature, these were selected by nature, and their number increased. However, remember, no variant is completely wiped out. Important MCQ. Similarly, as changes take place which are inevitable in nature, also industries came into existence. As industries came into existence, after industrialization, what happened was that the pollution started to increase. Lichens went away. You know, lichens are very good indicators of pollution. So as lichens disappeared, the bark of the tree again started to become dark. As they became dark, the dark-winged moth easily camouflaged, and vice versa. The white-winged moth or the light-winged moth which were there were now easy prey to predators. Because of the changes in the environment, because of the inherent variation that was present in the organism, the dark-winged moths survived now. So the values and the numbers became reversed, and the light-winged moths eventually perished away, but they did not completely disappear. No variant is completely wiped out, please remember. Okay, so this is a beautiful example of how changes in the environment and the inherent variation which is present in an organism helps some to adapt and thereby increase in number, and some does not adapt well. Is that clear? Another beautiful understanding of the evidences is by embryological evidences. When we are talking about embryological evidence, this was given to us by Ernst Haeckel. Ernst Haeckel sir told us that if you observe the embryos, and if you observe just the first row, you see that almost all the embryos have a tail. They have a pharyngeal gill slit which is present. We may think that they are all of the same kind. However, if you see, some are of fishes, there's amphibians, there's reptiles, there's birds, there are mammals, okay. So he said that the organism in the embryological life would have some of the other features of the ancestors that are existing during the embryological life. However, only some will persist when we become, or when we are given birth to. Rest will eventually perish away. However, Carl Ernst von Baer said that no organism passes through the adult stage of the other organism, so he kind of did not approve it to a great extent, okay. But from this we can though understand that yes, in the embryological life history we can understand common ancestry. So that was helping us to understand that okay, what Darwin sir said was correct, okay. But then, how did different life forms or speciation take place? How did different species come into existence? Again, there are different theories which are there. There is a theory which is given by Lamarck sir, which is Lamarckism theory of inheritance of acquired characters. There is a theory which is obviously of our own Darwin sir. There is mutation theory given by Hugo de Vries sir. You've heard about him in the chapter of your principles of inheritance. He's the same Hugo de Vries sir. We have Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium. Now we quickly go through their theories, wherein the first three theories, the first one we've not completely accepted, the other two we have kind of negated this theory, and the second and the third one we have not completely accepted, but we cannot negate it, which will be taken into consideration in the Hardy-Weinberg theory. Now Lamarck sir gave us a theory of inheritance of acquired characters, where he states that evolution of life forms occurs which are driven by use and disuse of organs. That is, it is inheritance of acquired characters. So if some organs are used better, like if the giraffe uses his neck better and better, or stretches it more to feed onto the foliage of the higher strata, it will get better and better, and thereby this betterment will now be carried forward into the next generation. So the acquired characters go into the next generation. Some organs, like if you talk about the limbless reptiles which are there, according to him, they initially had limbs, but they did not use them, so it kind of diminished and it eventually perished away. So again, the next generation would be limbless. However, we've studied with Mendel sir and from Mendel sir that the characters which are present within the genes or which are inherited are the ones which are present in the genotype, and phenotypic changes will have no effect and will not be carried forward in the next generation. Hence, we cannot accept Lamarck sir's theory. Then Darwin sir was there. Darwin sir, as I told you, had gone to Galapagos Island and he was working there. He was doing a lot of research. Simultaneously, he was also working or studying the theory on population which was given by Malthus sir, Thomas Malthus sir. And he said that, or he found out that Thomas Malthus sir had said that overproduction or extensive increase in the production of the population will lead to something or the other in the nature which will curb the population. So Darwin sir went further ahead and said that overproduction, when it takes place with respect to population, but with that we have resources which are quite limited, isn't it? Resources are not increasing as much as the population. So since the resources are limited, there will always be struggle for existence. Again, because of the inherent variation, the one who is fit to survive, inherent minor variations, the one who is fit to survive will adapt and survive, and the one who is a little weaker one eventually will perish away. So he said that it's a gradual process of evolution, and he gave two key concepts of evolution. One is branching descent and one is natural selection. So he said that as a particular population has particular variation, the one who is better from that population will survive, will leave more progenies, the other one will perish away. So it has branched, okay. One remains, one gets perished away. The one who remains, again there are variations, changes in the abiotic factors will lead to, of the entire population, some to survive, some not to survive. So next generation, again some will survive, the others will not survive, and so on and so forth. There will be branching, and the one who survives are the ones who are fit to survive, because nature has selected them and natural selection has taken place. So that was about Darwin, sir, who proposed that it's a gradual process of evolution. We do not negate this theory, but just few organisms or one or two organisms in a population cannot bring about evolution. Then comes mutation theory by Hugo de Vries. Now Hugo de Vries, sir, you know, was one of the stalwarts who was the one who rediscovered and who told us about the Mendel's theory along with the other two scientists. Now he was working on an evening primrose plant. He knew about genetics. He was doing a lot of crosses and studying the Mendel's postulates again in greater depths. He one day, when he did a crossing, after a few days, he found out that one of the crop had changed in the color of the flowers. And he understood that though there was no it was not because of the recessive gene, but there was a mutation that took place. And he said that this mutation, which is a single step mutation, mutations are just a small single step, right? Now this single step mutation led to a large change. So single step mutation causing the sudden change led to evolution of new species according to Hugo de Vries. So he called this single step large mutation as saltation. Mark it, it is a PYQ which has come in the question, okay. So according to Darwin, sir, evolution is minor, slow, and it is directionless. It's a gradual process. Whereas, as per what mutation theory given by Hugo de Vries, it is sudden, it is random, it is directionless, and it is caused by saltation. That is single step large mutation. My dear children, please mark, this is important, it's a PYQ. And he said that it is quick, it's sudden, it is random. Though it's random, it's directionless. This is the base for evolution. Again, one or few plants of Oenothera lamarckiana will not lead to speciation, will not lead to new species coming into existence. So then came Hardy and Weinberg, sir, who explained to us about population genetics. They said that there is a gene pool. Gene pool is the total number of all the alleles which are present in a particular genetic population. Now, the allele frequencies which are there will always remain constant from one generation to next generation. However, if the change takes place, only then evolution takes place. So if we are talking about a population, say if we are talking about this population, you can see that out of 20 beetles which are present here, only 4 of them are yellow, rest of them which are there are red. Now in this genetic population, now if the ratio which is there of the yellow is to red remains constant, not only in this generation, for generations to come, generation after generation, if the ratio remains constant, then you say that this population is in an equilibrium. There is no change happening. Equilibrium, remember from your physics. There is no change occurring. However, if there are factors which will affect this allele frequency, this is one frequency of allele, this is another frequency of allele. If the allele frequency keeps on changing, or factors which will affect the change in the allele frequency, say the red number more overpowers the yellow reduces, there's change in the allele frequency. Yellow increases, red reduces, again change in the allele frequency. So if there's change in this allele frequency, those are the factors which will lead to evolution, and it will lead to evolution. Is that clear? So let us understand this from the understanding of how we depict the frequency of alleles. Now they said that let us say that the frequency of allele capital A is written or is depicted as P. A frequency of allele small a is depicted as Q. They said that the sum total of all the allele frequencies, that is allele frequency A plus small a, that is P plus Q. Frequency of allele capital A is P, small a is Q. P plus Q will always remain 1. So if you're talking about allele capital A, frequency we depict it as P, frequency of allele small a as Q. So frequency of homozygous dominant P square, homozygous recessive Q square, and heterozygous as 2PQ. So if we say P plus Q is equal to 1, P plus Q square will also be equal to 1, and P plus Q the whole square is P square plus 2PQ plus Q square, which we've studied in our school section, which will be 1 ka square, which will be 1. So here frequency of capital A plus frequency of small a plus frequency of capital A small a, that will always remain 1, is nothing but a binomial expansion of P plus Q the whole square. Now if there are any factors that change the allele frequency, that is P, and change the value of Q, will lead to change in the population and will lead to evolution. Okay, so now when we talk about Hardy and Weinberg, sir, so as I told you, change in the allele frequencies will lead to evolution. What are the factors that bring about change in the allele frequencies? There is gene migration and gene flow, there's genetic drift, mutation, recombination, and all of this summing up with natural selection, very, very important, will lead to population change, will lead to change in the allele frequency. So if you're talking about gene migration and gene flow, genetic drift, recombination, or mutation, either of them with the natural selection over a period of years will make the generation or the population then look like a different species. So it's a gradual process. We cannot have it overnight. However, what Hugo de Vries said, mutation cannot be negated. This is one of the factors that will affect the allele frequencies, isn't it? Yeah, recombination, again the factor that will affect allele frequencies, so as gene flow and genetic drift. Now with natural selection, it will keep on looking different, and in what way, or what are the factors, or what are the characters that are selected of the population will make the population look accordingly different. So let us see. There will be 3 types of natural selections. There is stabilizing selection, there is directional selection, and there is disruptive selection. Just give me a second, please. Now when we are talking about stabilizing selection, directional and disruptive selection, we'll also take one example. I'll give you an example and we'll take up one small question which I have framed for you all. This has come in the NEET, and one numerical which we will do, which will help you. Okay. So now if we are talking about a particular population, okay, say for example, this was the original population. Okay, sorry. This was the original population. Now when we are talking about this as our original population, there were 3 different kinds of mice. Let us say we had grey mice, we had black mice, and we had brown mice. So we had, say grey, let us put them as brown, and black mice. Now for reasons not known, whatever were the changes in the abiotic factors, if the grey mice weren't naturally selected, the black weren't selected, but the mean or the average value was selected. So if the mean or the average value is selected, what happens is, as I told you, no variant is completely wiped off. So the number of grey mice and the black mice reduce, whereas the number of the brown mice increase, because these are the ones, or this is the character that's selected by nature, the mean character selected by nature. So when the mean character selected by nature, the graph which is there, or the peak which is there, will get narrower. See, the peak which was like this has now become narrower and has become taller. So as it has become narrowing and taller, because the mean character is selected, you call it as stabilizing selection. It's getting stable because the mean character is selected. So more individuals acquire mean character value, and the variations or the peripheral values are reduced, no variant completely wiped off. Coming to the next, Say for example, we are talking about in this condition, it was the black mice which were selected more as compared to the grey and the brown. So earlier, this was the peak, and here we had the average, here we had the grey, we had the black. So as the black mice were selected more as compared to the grey, as compared to the brown, the number of, or the peak which was there now shifts to one direction. So you see the peak has now shifted to the right. So it is the one of the two character values or one of the peripheral character values is selected more as compared to the other. So you have individuals of one extreme value that is selected and are more favored. So it leads to shift in one direction, so called as directional selection. Similarly, if both the peripheral values are selected but the average value is not selected, so this was the original peak which was there, the original population. Now you see this value is selected more and this, so the grey and the black are selected more, the brown aren't selected, that is the average. So there will be two peaks that will be formed and the number of average value is reduced. So since the original peak has been disrupted, you call such kind of selection as disruptive selection. Is that clear, everyone? Cool. Moving ahead to understanding of a brief account of evolution. Now when we are talking about the brief account of evolution, I have summarized it as a small table and then proceeding further ahead. When did the universe come into existence? We just studied the universe came into existence approximately 20 billion years ago. We studied in the beginning of the topic. Earth came into existence approximately 4.5 billion years ago. Life on Earth was 4 billion years ago. Non-cellular form of life, 3. Cellular, what did I tell you? Yes, 2 billion years ago. Non-cellular were what? They were giant macromolecules, I told you, which were polysaccharides, which were RNA, which were proteins, etc. Cellular form of life, 2 billion years ago. And these, if you remember, as I told you, they were basically aquatic. Unicellular, which then evolved into multicellular. And these were giant macromolecules, which were in the form of RNA, polysaccharides, proteins, etc. Invertebrates then were the first one to come into existence. However, plants invaded first and then animals. Amongst animals, the invertebrates, and then slowly, gradually, vertebrates. So, jawless fishes were then the ones who came approximately 350 million years ago. They were similar to coelacanth or lowfins. They were thought to be extinct. However, in 1938, in African aquatic habitat, we found a similar one which was thought to be extinct, was a similar coelacanth fish that was found. Okay, and then seaweeds and few reptiles came approximately 320 million years ago. But again, one important thing that you need to remember, which is given in the NCERT, is that the plants invaded land much before animals. This is important. Then came reptiles. Reptiles came approximately next 200 million years after. Now these reptiles, so initially they were fishes. Fishes then evolved into amphibians. Okay, so these there were these coelacanth or the lowfins that we saw. They were similar to them were the organisms who had stout and strong fins. So they would come on land, go back to water, again come on land, go back to water. So it was thought that these are primarily the ancestors of amphibians. Okay, so fishes evolved into animals which came on land, went back to water, so they evolved into amphibians, and then evolved approximately 200 million years after was the reptiles. Now in these reptiles, few of them went back to water. When they went back to water, they kind of evolved into ichthyosaurs. Okay, the aquatic variant called ichthyosaurs. But some of them remained as land reptiles. And these land reptiles, one of them were dinosaurs. The biggest of all the dinosaurs, as you must have seen in the Jurassic Park movie also, was T-Rex, the Tyrannosaurus Rex. It was approximately 20 feet in height and had huge, fearsome, dagger-like teeth. Okay, they were very, very dangerous. And they kind of became extinct 65 million years ago. Why did they go into extinction? Now, we have exactly no clue about it. Some say that the climatic conditions changed, which they couldn't adapt. So, if you remember survival of the fittest, Darwin sir said that the ones who will adapt to the environmental factors, to the abiotic factors, will survive, will kind of remain, will reproduce and will leave more progeny. So, reproductive fitness. But the ones who couldn't survive will eventually perish away, isn't it? So because one of the reasons could be that they couldn't survive, so they perished away. So the climatic conditions could have killed them. There are a lot of theories. One of them is these. The reptiles which we just saw, which were land reptiles, of which dinosaurs extinct, but there were other land reptiles also. So these earlier reptiles which were there, they evolved into two features. Now understand this, whenever we are studying such charts, we will go from below upwards. Okay, these are the various periods which are mentioned. Okay, we have in pink, this is about the plants. We have various eras which are mentioned, Paleozoic, Mesozoic, Cenozoic. So you will always read the chart from below upwards. This is the most primitive, this is the most recent amongst all of them. So now if we go into reptiles, then we'll go on to plants also. I'll just explain you how do we read this chart. So we have early reptiles which evolved into two kind of lineages, Sauropsid and Synapsid. Now Sauropsid, which is there, now evolved into multiple reptiles. So Sauropsid eventually evolved into turtles, it evolved into lizards, it evolved into your snakes, it evolved into tortoises, and Sauropsids also evolved into thecodont. Now these thecodont which you see, they are now extinct, but they eventually evolved into the present day crocodiles. Some of them evolved into dinosaurs, again extinct, and others evolved into birds. So from where did birds come into existence? From reptiles. So reptiles evolved into birds. Though not given into NCERT, Huxley sir was the one who said that birds are glorified reptiles. Okay, birds evolved from reptiles. Then we have synapsids. Synapsid, who also evolved from early reptiles, now evolved into pelycosaurs, pelycosaurs into therapsids, and therapsids into mammals. So remember, fishes then eventually evolved into some of them into amphibians, then amphibians into reptiles, reptiles into birds and mammals. It's not that reptiles into birds and birds into mammals. So there were two lineages from reptiles, one birds and one mammals. Okay, this is how you read this chart. Similarly, when you talk about the origin of plants, plants were the ones that invaded land first. As I told you, Paleozoic, Mesozoic and Cenozoic are the eras. In the Paleozoic, we have four periods: Silurian, Devonian, Carboniferous, Permian. In the Mesozoic, we have Triassic, Jurassic and Cretaceous. And in the Cenozoic, we have Tertiary and Quaternary. So earlier, there were chlorophyte ancestors which are there, evolved into tracheophytes, evolved into rhinia type plants. But chlorophytes, when they evolved into tracheophytes, a small lineage into bryophytes, tracheophytes into zoosterophyllum, arborescent lycopods, herbaceous lycopods, then rhinia into xylophyton, and xylophyton into all of these. Now, till date, there was only once in section B that such a question had come from this part. But it's always better if you can remember well and good, so that you have an understanding of how it comes. And the last but not the least, we talk about ourselves, that how did man evolve? So we eventually evolved, and now we are with the beautiful gadgets that we have. So what is the lineage? Initially originated was Dryopithecus and Ramapithecus, followed by Australopithecus, Homo habilis, Homo erectus, Homo neanderthal and Homo sapiens. This could be the question that can come as a lineage, as an MCQ, that what is the correct order of the origin of man. So this can come as our MCQ. So here I have made a beautiful chart so that it becomes very, very easy for you to understand the entire human evolution. This comes as your MCQ, very, very important. Match the column true and false. So let us quickly go through the criteria, and then we have one numerical that we will be solving. Yes, numerical in biology, you understood and heard it well. So Dryopithecus and Ramapithecus were the species that originated approximately 15 million years ago. Dryopithecus was more ape-like, Ramapithecus was more man-like. However, they walked like chimpanzees and they were hairy. Then came man-like fossils 3 to 4 million years ago. They had height which was not taller than 4 feet, but they walked upright. Then came Australopithecus 2 million years ago, lived in East African grasslands, hunted with stone weapons, but never ate meat. They ate fruit. Homo habilis, first human-like being hominid, did not again eat meat. So it was only Homo erectus that ate meat, is what is given in the NCERT, and we follow it. Cranial capacity 650 to 800 cc. Homo erectus 1.5 million years ago, as I told you, they ate meat and their cranial capacity was 900 cc. So you see it's getting better. Neanderthal man 1 lakh to 40,000 years ago, cranial capacity 1400 cc. They used hide to cover their body and buried their dead. Homo sapiens 75,000 to 10,000 years ago, the prehistoric cave art was developed by them approximately 18,000 years ago. One of the prehistoric cave art that you see is the cave paintings at the Bhimbetka rock shelter, Raisin district of Madhya Pradesh. This has come as a PYQ, not only in NEET, but also this was a question as a PYQ, you can say, in KBC also. So you can remember it in future, it will help you there also. Agriculture approximately 10,000 years ago, and then human settlement began, and rest is a history. So that is how different humans also came into existence. Now quickly taking up one numerical on Hardy and Weinberg equilibrium. So say for example, if we are talking about the hair type, say we talk about two hair type, one is curly hair and straight hair. Now curly hair is a dominant variant. This is a dominant variant and this is a recessive variant. Now let us consider that the allele for curly hair is written as capital C. Allele for straight hair is written as small c. Okay. If we talk about frequency of allele for capital straight hair, we will represent it as P. And if we are talking about frequency of allele for straight hair, we represent it as Q. Now say for example, we take an understanding of a population . So if we say that in a population, the frequency of individuals with straight hair is 4%. Frequency of individuals with straight hair in a population is 4%. What is the allele frequency of alleles for straight hair and curly hair? Now when we have such kind of a question, my dear children, first be crisp in your understanding that whether they have given this 4% is in the question the frequency of allele or frequency of genotype. Okay. Now what are they saying? How do you understand this? See, here they have asked you what is the allele frequency of alleles for straight hair and curly hair. So if they are asking you what is the allele frequency, this obviously is not the allele frequency. This is a small trick for you to remember it, how do you solve it in the exam and not get confused. So if they are saying that straight hair individuals are 4%, will we have it as an allele frequency that is small q as 4%? No, don't get confused in such a thing, okay? They are saying individuals. Some individual, we all are diploid individuals, so obviously it will be, if it is straight hair is a recessive allele and hereby this is a recessive trait. So this will be q square. So q square is 4%. If it is 4%, my dear children, this is 4 by 100. So our q square is 0.04. Right? If q square is 0.04, q will be square root of 0.04, which is 0.2. So q will be 0.2, and from here we have understanding of q. That is one of the allele frequencies. Right. Now in the Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium, Hardy and Weinberg sir themselves have helped us to understand that if the sum total of all alleles, that is P plus Q, how much is it? It is 1. So if P plus Q is 1, we have Q. What will be our P? So we will have P plus 0.2 is 1 and our P will be 0.8. 1 minus 0.2, so our P will be 0.8. As simple as that, a simple mathematical question, isn't it? So we have allele frequencies for straight hair is 0.2. Q, and allele frequency for curly hair is 0.8. Now if they have asked us, tell us about how many individuals will be homozygous for curly hair, what are we going to do? Homozygous for curly hair individuals will be P square, right? So P square will be 0.8 into 0.8, which is 0.64, and thereby the percentage of individuals, if they're asking us, will be 64%. Are you understanding? It will be 64%. And if they're asking us heterozygous, remember heterozygous will be 2PQ, so 2 into 0.2 into 0.8, 8 2s are 16, 16 2s are 32, so that will be 32%. Is that clear? So I hope this small crux of entire evolution, which I have tried to explain by taking each and every important part of this particular chapter, is absolutely crystal clear to you all. You all have understood the important points very well, and I hope it will help you in the exams. So with that saying, thank you very much for today. See you soon in the next session, which we will be taking on biotechnology. So till then, take care, study well, study properly, and prepare well for your NEET exams. So that's all from my side for today. Take care and see you soon. Bye-bye.